Right on to our last city, which is Dublin, of course. Dublin, an example of yet another beautiful European city of which you might wonder if it really needs high-rise, but that would not be a reason not to want them on why these buildings could not contribute to the cityscape of Dublin as well. I was given a really nice leaflet of all the big projects that are underway in Dublin, and it certainly is very impressive. With us here to talk about it more is Brian Duffy from Traynor O'Toole.
Good morning, everyone. Tall buildings in Dublin. I'm going to outline the cultural context for tall buildings in Ireland, in Dublin in particular. I'll be showing two approaches to planning, one conventional and one an alternative approach. And then I will summarize by suggesting a potential way ahead for more environmentally based tall buildings in Ireland. We've had tall buildings in Ireland for 1,000 years. This is a round tower, of which we have many in Ireland. They're 1,000 years old. The point is, why would we build tall? Well, it has to be useful and has to have a meaningful purpose. This is how we used to live in rural Ireland up until about 100 years ago. On the bottom right-hand side, you'll see what is known in Irish as a clachan. A clachan is a grouping of homes and farm buildings for the mutual benefit of all. In those times, people and buildings lived very close to the natural world. In essence, it was a responsive collective. This, if you've ever seen the film The Field, starring Richard Harris, this is the Bull McCabe, this man's name. In many respects, the Bull McCabe typifies the historical Irish mindset. That is, the innate desire to live on the land and to own that land. It's this mindset which is maybe at the heart of the resistance to building tall in Ireland. For those of you who don't know Ireland so well, Dublin is on the eastern side. It has a history of about 1,000 years old. This is Dublin in the 1600s. You can see the River Liffey coming in from the east end of the town. The growth pattern of Dublin from, say, 1750 growing out up until the present day. These are arterial road networks, our ring road, our recently built tram lines, more on the south side. And this is a proposed eastern bypass which is going to connect a port tunnel which currently connects from the airport into the centre of town. It's going to go underneath Dublin Bay and essentially connect the north and the south sides of the town. Today, Dublin has a very low-rise cityscape. The historic centre of the town is defined by the River Liffey and a series of secondary canals. The building on the top left, Liberty Hall, was built in the 1960s. This is currently our tallest building in the centre of town at 17 floors high. There is a fear of tall buildings in Dublin. We don't have a history, unlike our European counterparts, we don't really have a history of apartment living or that kind of lifestyle in Dublin until the last 10 years. The general perception is that Dublin should exist as a city in the low rise, and you can see the upper slide kind of captures the fear that might be imposed, what might be imposed on the people of Dublin if tall buildings were to be allowed. The lower slide is a town 30 miles north from Dublin, and it shows the media response to a 12-storey building. So that is what we have to contend with. Although tall buildings are seen as being a new thing, many people, especially in our working environments, including myself, I'd lived and worked in Hong Kong and Japan. A lot of people have returned to Ireland who've lived elsewhere in the world. So it's not really so foreign, but it's more in the popular consciousness. Some of this consciousness is driven by a negative experience of some high-rise buildings on the outskirts of Dublin and Ballymun in the 1960s. This was more the result of a failed government policy in the area rather than anything to do with mere architectural design. The 1960s in Ireland was a period of industrialisation of the rural areas of Ireland, or where people moved from the rural areas of Ireland. The 1980s saw quite high unemployment and still a lot of emigration from Ireland, people having to find work elsewhere in the world. The 90s, however, all of this began to change, and our Celtic Tiger economy was born. We had a lot of innovation, high-tech, knowledge-based employment came to Ireland, very much fueled by a very attractive low corporation tax that was offered by the government in Ireland. We ourselves at that time, as an example of how things changed in the same area as those tenement blocks I just shown, we were involved with a joint scheme with Grimshaw's on a 90-acre site in that area for 25 commercial office buildings, about 3 million square feet. And that, in many ways, captures the sudden change that really happened from about 10 years ago. This is a spire in the centre of Dublin's O'Connell Street. In many ways, it symbolises the new wealth and prosperity that had come. In essence, Irish aspirations truly soared in this time. Ireland emerged on a world stage. We had a very modern culture. We were confident, dynamic, expressive. As one commentator said, for the first time in history, the Irish had a chance to dream. In our office, we have, together with my directors, Paddy O'Toole and Chris Ryan, who are here with me today, we have pursued tall buildings on behalf of our clients for 10 years. These are just some early examples of several schemes that we've worked on. The ability to deliver these schemes has been restricted by planning policies in Dublin. The point is, why should we build tall? Well, one of the major issues we have, and possibly the biggest tangible driver, is urban sprawl. Dublin is soon to be the size of Los Angeles, although it only has 25% of the population size. Our commuter belt has increased from 25 to 100 kilometres in the last 6 to 8 years. Commuting is 3 or 4 hours per day for many people living in the greater Dublin area. We have an obsession with car use. Our usage is 70% greater than France, 50% more than the UK, and 30% greater than the US. We have an average mileage of 25,000 kilometres a year. Our rail network cannot keep up with the process of change and is very far behind. Fears of unsustainable development have been realised at this time. There are also other fears which often missed, such as obesity, heart disease, and social isolation. So this is that the purple line is the M50 road, which is a ring road which traditionally would have shown the extent of Dublin. We are now commuting far beyond this. Commuting is a national grievance. Peak hours are very, very difficult. We have problems with urban sprawl as well. House building is 4 times the EU average. That's up until last year. Dublin's population of 1.5 million people is due to increase to twice that by 2025. We have an urban growth pattern that is unique within the EU, and as stated by the European Environmental Agency, Dublin is now cited as an example to Eastern European states, new Eastern European states within the EU, as a worst-case scenario for urban sprawl. But what has the planning policy been? Eight years ago, the planning department in Dublin produced a strategy for intensification and building tall. The orange and purple areas in this slide show what are the least contextually sensitive areas, i.e. the most developable areas for tall buildings. The red lines are existing train networks, which are mostly in the east side of the town. That's our tram lines. Our future metro line, which is due to connect the centre of town to the airport. The report identified a series of locations for singular landmark towers. These were sited on citywide viewing corridors, key focal points on the road networks, and on primary transport nodes. Generally, heights were restricted between 9 to 15 stories in these areas, with the exception for key landmarks. I should point out that low-rise is considered to be 4 stories, mid-rise 12 stories, and high-rise about 150 metres tall, super high-rise considered to be anything above that. 3 cluster locations were identified as well, 1 in Houston in the west, and 2 in the Docklands area, 1 in the north and 1 in the south of the Docklands. We know that clusters increase density, but singular landmarks don't tangibly impact on density. Singular landmarks, however, is what has been pursued rather than clusters over the last 8 years. Just to look at some of the examples, this is, and there are only a few. This is a Houston Tower. It's a 32-story office building. It's on the western side of town. It's a safer option to build tall in this area than it is in the centre of town. This is an example of a proposal for building tall in the centre of town. This 49-story office tower as part of the digital hub, which was a government plan to really bring a digital innovation centre into the centre of town, was dubbed by the media as a mini Manhattan in Dublin. It was refused planning. It is in a contextually sensitive area. Another building currently in a contextually sensitive area, as I call it, is Berkeley Court. And although this is in a low-rise area, that low-rise area is actually an area that is filled with corporate bodies and corporate office space. And it's with this in mind that this building's been proposed there. To give you some idea of land costs, this is a 7-acre site, and the value of this land is €54 million per acre, to give you some idea of the real estate value. The most likely and the most suitable area for a tall buildings initiative, in our opinion, is the Docklands area. It's the best served area by rail networks, by the tram line, by the port tunnel, and the future and eastern bypass. It also has several bridge links. Concentrating on the first phase, a lot of which has been built over the last 10 years or so, there's a lot of sites, a lot of large sites here, brownfield sites, which can be developed. There's little existing context, which would make it an ideal location for sustainable tall buildings initiative. This is a point tower currently under construction. It's a 32-story office tower, and it's at the mouth of the river on the north side. On the south side, diagonally opposite to that, there was a proposal for a tall building here. However, the planning department had preferred an adjacent site right on the corner. You can probably see on the slide, right next to the red dot. This is the U2 Tower, and there was an international competition held for this. 2 rounds of that competition have seen this scheme, which is a Norman Foster scheme, which is currently proposed for that site. In planning terms, the gate, this and the building on the other side, on the north side, would create a gateway at the mouth of the river. However, whereas we are very happy to see tall building proposals and that, and we applaud the architects behind these. In planning terms, We feel that a policy that discourages the development of a cluster merely to preserve the iconic nature of these two towers needs to be discussed and examined in the light of current environmental issues that perturb the world. This is a scheme that we're involved in next to the U2 tower. It's 500,000 square feet of office space. You can see the potential for a cluster in this area. However, we will be curtailed from such because we do have to preserve the icon that is next to us. Market forces are truly driving change. There's several requirements which we're involved in for buildings, single-tenant buildings of 500,000 square feet of commercial office space. The need to build tall exists. This is a scheme we were involved in last year with Chris Wilkinson, who's a former boss of mine. In these buildings, the tenants for these buildings require very high quality environmental criteria. They all demand BREEAM Excellent in terms of their building's environmental performance. What we've found, we're on site with several of these buildings just now. We have high-class facades, a lot of twin skins, geothermal boreholes, chill beams. So we have to deliver very environmental areas. The rear view of this building can see the potential for a cluster once again. We think that the real potential or the real need for clusters based on the market at the moment is, as we've shown on this slide. If the buildings here, rather than be singular landmarks, were to be grouped, we would have a cluster pattern of this kind. The potential to direct and control development of clusters exists. Clusters are effective in reducing urban sprawl. The use of tall buildings should not be singular urban gestures, but they need to be robust and versatile, sustainable solutions. These are just some examples of some buildings we're working on in this area and how we're looking at how tall buildings might be and how clusters might be formed. We do need a methodology where such a cityscape can be enabled. Planning policy, however, is slow in comparison to market demand. I'm going to show an alternative approach where we'd worked on the south side of town. It's a large industrial estate, and we've worked on this scheme for about over 2 years. I had proposed a 50-story building on this site. That's just some slides of the work in progress over recent years. On that, we did a master plan for the entire site, which was based on tall buildings in some of those areas. This was a joint scheme with ourselves and Think Place and Terry Farrells. Our client is a very large landholder in this area, and essentially there's a boulevard that connects the tram line to the gateway site. We ourselves have already built over 3 million square feet in this area for the one client. These are just some of the examples. We have a very good rapport with the planning department in the area. And this is the current tall building that we've proposed on that site. This is the gateway building. It is an environmental scheme which has 20% renewable energy in it, and we use various things like carpooling, electric cars and so forth. In essence, what has happened, we made a tall buildings report for this area which was effectively endorsed when the planning department in the area carried out their own tall buildings report, in which they identified our building as one of others that should be built in this area. You can see it, the gateway building outlined there. The way ahead, we believe that we need to initiate a process of collective analysis and thinking. This is a conjecture of what Dublin might be. In its most simplistic term, there needs to be collective analysis and thinking. we have to share our knowledge and aspirations alike. It has to be collective interaction via a proactive process. Traynor O'Toole, we advocate grouping sustainable energy processes as per this green belt as I describe it. Returning to our indigenous clachan, we propose grouping tall buildings and clusters within sustainable energy collectives so we can make the most benefit out of a lot of the knowledge that we have over, for example, combined heat and power and district heating and so forth. Currently, we are presenting tall building proposals to all for clients within sustainable design parameters. Within our tall buildings, we strive to enable a relationship between people and the natural world. We recognise that we have a responsibility to all of the world. Over the last 3 days, we've seen schemes from all over the world, and although in different countries, all of the schemes are linked by the environment and the responsibility we all have to sustain this world. I feel that what we're doing in Dublin, although at a different scale, is no different to Songdo or Guangzhou or even here in Dubai. I hope that we can all help each other, as after all, we all live under the one sky. Thank you.